morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tim Spencer from the Rural Survival Show, sitting in for Mr. John Moore on this, a Tuesday, the 13th day of August in the year of our Lord, 2019. Today, our special guest is Mr. Steve Ben-Nun of IsraeliNews.org, or is it IsraeliNewsLive.org? I forgot, Steve.
It's all right, Tim. It's IsraeliNewsLive.org.
Okay, fantastic. Anyway, folks, Steve has got some real bombshell information to start off with the hour with. Steve, please tell people what you know, because it blew my socks off.
Yeah, John, it's yesterday I'd got a tweet in from a friend of mine in the Netherlands there, and he had told me, he said, and sharing with me the actual television footage of Fox 14 News releasing the story about the El Paso shooting before it actually happened. And
wow.
Tim, I was taken back by it, but, nothing really surprises me, and I'll have to tell you why, because when I listened to this, and in fact I recorded it to make sure I wouldn't lose it as well, because I know these type things here, they don't want to see out in the public eye, even if it's not true. They don't want that type of information out there,
right,
just because of the implications. But Fox 14, they were on the air. The person that was recording this, I suppose, was using their phone. It was time-stamped as they were recording it. Their phone had on there 2:37, and the lady is saying there's been a shooting at the Walmart in El Paso, Texas, and she says, let me get the source for this. She said at 3 p.m., and then she stops and she says, wait, it's not even 3 p.m. yet. And,
wow.
Now, regardless, I guess we'd say, because I don't know exactly what time the shooting took place.
It started at about 11 a.m. your time, 10 a.m. my time. I had just started my Saturday show.
Okay. But the strange thing that I saw in this was that her timestamp was being produced at a later time already than what the time was that they were doing the broadcast.
Right.
That lets you know that they had information in advance on it, because how could they have a later timestamp on something like that? So I don't know if this is really going to go anywhere as far as people that are watching this, that actually, in fact, I'm going to see if I can actually find it here real quick while we're even talking here now, Tim, just to see if it remained online. But the whole thing was, though, is that this particular situation with and then on top of that, it's still up. This was first put out. I don't know when they first put this out. I think it was actually on the 5th of August when it first came out. But the thing is that was kind of odd about this situation is that a good friend of mine in Texas, Dr. Rosa, she had sent me the information about the shooting when it was happening, and also because she speaks fluent Spanish, she said, Steve, you need to take a look at this, because she said, I've got information here where they've interviewed two different witnesses. One of them was standing by the front door right there at the checkout, she said, with a clear shot of the door, and was claiming 3 to 4 armed gunmen had stormed the store, shooting as they came in. And, and of course, I know even John Moore would say, you can never fully trust, your eyewitnesses. And I understand that, because
right.
The fact that she says 3 to 4, okay, was it 3 or was it 4? But nonetheless, you begin to put the evidence together, especially if you get more than one piece of evidence. But, Tim, there's a bigger bombshell to this, though, than what people realize. And I'm going to back up just a little bit on this.
Okay.
couple of things that I've known for quite some time. One, I knew from sources at the White House, and this is going all the way back to the Bush administration, but we'd actually had a private meeting in Washington, D.C. during the Obama administration. He had worked under the Bush administration. He was at that time currently with Obama, and now he is with President Trump, working there at the White House. And he had shared with me then, in this private meeting that we had in D.C., he said, Steve, he says, and of course at that time we just had the Washington Mall black man that had set itself on fire. Not happened too long after that. And he told me, he said, Steve, he said, they're trying to find a way to disarm this nation.
Oh, yeah.
He said, he said, in Tunisia, he said, we used the skull-to-brain technology in order to get the riots started over there. It caused the we as a result, we got the Arab Spring. Right? Yeah. And he said, but it doesn't work here. And I'm flabbergasted by the very fact that he says it. Now you have to keep in mind, Tim, this man here, he's a believer in Yeshua and Christ Jesus, and he's just really wanting to get the information to the people, but in an anonymous way. And he said, the government has been trying to find a way to stir the American people basically to a revolution. Now, he doesn't use the word revolution there, but that's just my words there added to his.
Right.
But he did use the word to riot. And he said you can't get them to do it. And he specifically told me they were trying to target races. Now, of course, in this case here, the black man set himself on fire, so they were hoping the black community would come up and and protest. He said, and the same thing with the black woman with a child in the car that rammed the gates of the White House. He said, again, skull-to-brain technology was being used for this. And we're talking about an individual. I can't divulge too much information about him, but I can tell you, he accompanied President Bush on his plane all over the Middle East, etc., to ensure his safety. And so this man continues to do this to this day. And so as a result of this, I knew, of course, what he's telling me is credible information. And then he shared with me, and I don't think that this was something that was classified or not known in certain circles at the time, but he shared with me the document that the United Nations had shared with Obama, demanding to know what was the United States going to do to disarm its people under UN mandate. And so at that time, I realized, boy, this is a serious situation. They're, wanting to harm the nation, but do it through violence. And so, Tim, it's never calmed down at all. And of course, I look at the situation with El Paso. I could go back and I can even, here, I'm living right now in Orlando. Of course, I spent the last a little over 4 years overseas in Europe and Israel, different places there where me and my family lived. And we came here as our son was in high school. We wanted him to finish that out here in the United States. But so down in Orlando, we had the school shooting that took place here. And,
right.
And I'm finding a lot of similarities between the school shooting that happened here in South Florida, Parkland school shooting, and that of El Paso. And I say that, Tim, because we had one of the students from the Parkland school shooting that spoke with my wife about that, and he was afraid to come on. He said, I want to come on Israeli News Live to discuss this. He said, but, we're under a lot of threat right now for speaking out. And he said, but I can tell you, and he told my wife this, he said, there was more than one shooter in that school that day.
And I absolutely believe that.
Yes, absolutely, Tim. And this is the same thing we see with the witnesses there from the El Paso massacre at the Walmart there. And so, I'm seeing a trend, and of course, in the case of the school shootings, and maybe even with El Paso too, they're trying to bring it into as a racial thing with the Mexican people. But in the case of school shootings, that seems to be more to appeal to the emotions of the American public and the safety of their children by saying, look, we got to change these gun laws. And in reality, they want to completely do away with those gun laws, which we'll get into later in the broadcast why. I even know why, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But in that case of El Paso, Texas, going back to the school shooting there, we had the one teacher that had actually mentioned, that she was actually grazed with a bullet while the teacher across the hallway from her was killed. And
I remember that.
You remember, Tim, in her testimony, she said, why are the police here shooting at us? Because the guy that she saw was dressed in full body armor, fully covered face mask, everything, as if it was a policeman. And the odd thing was that didn't fit the description of the young man. But
exactly.
Tim, what was interesting though in the case of the young man that was accused of this shooting, I noticed his testimony when he did his confession, the way the police recorded it. He said he was hearing voices in his head. And then they talk about demons, that, they kind of demonized him as a result of that. Now, to me, he was just a patsy. He was, if they were using skull-to-brain technology with him, that would explain him making the statement, he heard voices in his head.
It would.
Yeah, and no doubt, Tim, maybe the guy was targeted to because they, if you let me put it this way, if you're going to plan something like this, and you need a patsy, and I know this from my own experience back in the years when I worked with the CIA, that we really have to give it a lot of thought in figuring out how we're going to pin the next person's life that you're going to take, especially when it was in the United States, on in those days there. I hate to say it for the sake of our black brothers and sisters out there, but it would, they would work on finding a way to pin it on the black community. A robbery gone bad, drug crime gone bad, whatever the case was, there was always a lot of thought and preparation in making sure that it appeared to be that way. Now, I will say this for the record, for those that are listening, in the different cases that I was aware of personally, and even cases that I knew of indirectly, there was never a black person convicted of any of those crimes that were carried out by the CIA on American soil. So, which is something we're not supposed to do, but I can tell you it does happen. Unfortunately.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Steve, I got a quick question for you, and it's sort of off and on this subject at the same time. Now, I worked with them. My son still does. Do you believe that the CIA should be disbanded?
No, I don't think they should be disbanded. Even though as much as what I saw as far as the evil side of it, but what I do believe is that that's a loaded question too, Tim, because there's two sides of the coin of that. There is a purpose that the CIA serves internationally, and it is for the safeguarding of the United States. And
I agree.
And there's a lot of aspects of the CIA people just have no idea of. I mean, as you would know, Tim, we have people that work in Washington, D.C., they wear the suits, they sit behind computers, they manage things, they manage field case things that are going on. I just happen to be caught up during the time of the Contra affair from a different angle. And of course, I knew about the drug smuggling, the exchange for weapons, the sending the weapons down to Central America, things of that nature there.
Right.
And so the thing that I would say that the only thing I could really see in this is that, one, I know for a fact there are just so many crooked politicians, it's not even funny. And there's a lot of politicians that are paid off because they're part of the ring. They're part of where, when the drugs are brought in illegally, they get their cut. And not to say there's not a lot of good politicians. There's good politicians as well.
Oh, yeah.
You can't say the word a lot in that case there. But, I can tell you right now, Tim, there was an indictment in 1990. And I can't go into the details of that indictment, but I will tell you this much here. There were over 30 Florida politicians that their records were being subpoenaed for illegal campaign contributions as a result of a case that involved the murder of a CFO of a major corporation that was allegedly involved in money laundering. Well, it wasn't just alleged, it was money laundering, but it wasn't what they thought it was. It was in the millions of dollars, and I knew of several of those politicians that were very much involved in what was going on, knew about the drug money going on, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, there's that crooked element in there, and of course that's one reason, Tim, too. I believe why we're not a cashless society already, because in order to run those covert operations, you need cash, and of course they needed to use the drugs as their way to get the cash, so that there was wasn't a paper trail that would come back and say, oh, by the way, we're purchasing weapons to give to the Nicaraguans down there to go, the Sandinistas, to go kill the people in Nicaragua, to overthrow the government. Well, the same thing happens today. The only difference is we're dealing with Syria. We're dealing with the jihadists fighting down there to overthrow the Syrian government. We're also dealing with Iran as well. So.
All right. Hey, Steve, hang on just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in about 3 minutes. We'll take the call after. Be right back.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tim Spencer sitting in for John Moore on this Tuesday, the 13th day of August, year of our Lord 2019. We're visiting with Mr. Steve Benoon of IsraeliNewsLive.org, and we're talking about current happenstances in the world. Steve, one comment I wanted to make, getting back to this television broadcast that was out of sync with reality. Do you remember on 9/11, the BBC reporting that Building 7 had fallen 20 minutes before it did? This sounds like the same type of thing.
Exactly, Tim. That's exactly what it is. There's, I know that when this particular article came out, the question was being proposed by the individual that had posted this, is Twitter and Fox and all these others, are they working together for the same purpose? Well, the answer to that is yes and no. The yes side is that these networks are involved at the deeper level. Those that have the knowledge, that have to put the propaganda out there, but on the surface, the reporters, etc., just as you would know as well, Tim, they probably are completely clueless as to what's going on. So
they read what's on the teleprompter. They don't know what's really going on.
Exactly. They have no clue, and but that's the whole thing about just how deep these things go. And of course, in the old days it's a lot different than what it is now, and we didn't have the technology, things like that they have now, but still, a lot of thought, a lot of planning had to go into every operation that was going to be carried out, because the last thing you want to do is end up in jail. Some of us, though, could end up in jail and it wasn't a problem. You get right back out. You just bring an embarrassment, and then you have to cover up that trail too, as far as, dealing with these backgrounds there. So, but, I was actually thinking too, as we were discussing right before we went on break there, we're talking about these weapons that were being purchased, as I said, it's still the same thing that goes on today, and we will remain a cash society until they have completed, in my opinion, a global takeover. I do need to go back just for a moment, and it kind of goes together with what I'm saying here now. In the case that I was working on, that involved very major organization that was money laundering the drug money, and at the same time paying off these politicians, and no telling who all else got paid off as well during that time. But there were weapons being purchased. I knew of one specific instance, which that wasn't what I dealt with. I just knew of one case because they had a shipment of AKs where the case broke open, or the crate broke open, I should say, in transit, which was, they considered that a funny episode. But at the same time, though, get my thought back here where I wanted to go with this. Oh, yes, I know where I wanted to go, though. When President Bush became president of the United States in 1990, the situation that was going on got picked up by the IRS investigators with this particular massive company here, along with a couple of other agencies that were investigating for the embezzlement and for the illegal campaign contributions across several states. And as a result, when Bush came into power, he immediately put an end to that investigation and had the company plead guilty to just racketeering charges and pay a $500,000 fine. And I thought that was rather interesting. And, and Tim, for me, it was really, of course, I didn't think about it back then. It was later in life that I began to, go back and look at these things, and really, because I didn't pay attention to the news as much in those early years, because I was in my early 20s, and it was more like cowboys and Indians to me. But But I go back and I look at it now, and I realize that what a Republican president was doing was he was covering for a slew of Democrats, and I realized that it didn't matter whether you were Republican or Democrat. The guys are all working together. And I knew this firsthand. I mean, I've been in senators' offices before. I have been in congressmen's offices, and then you leave there and you've got new orders. And I'm like, this is a strange thing. I didn't really think much of it. I just figured, okay, that's the way it works. But in light of all this, with this cover-up here, we also know too. This is about the time when President Bush had made that very eerie proclamation while he was president about a new world order, and there's been a lot of speculation.
All right, hey, we'll be right back. I got a surprise for everybody.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We have a special promotion going on at Republic Broadcasting. This is a fundraiser for Republic Broadcasting involving the Energy Cleaner. Mail me a postcard. My address is at my website at thelibertyman.com. We pick a postcard every other Thursday. When your postcard is drawn out, you get to buy an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285, $70 discount. $200 goes to Republic Broadcasting. You also get a 10% discount on my mattress pads. So get those postcards in, put your name, your telephone number, your email address on there, and when your postcard is drawn, you get to get an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285. Mattress pads, 10% off. Help us out at Republic Broadcasting and help yourself to get an energy cleaner at a deep discount. It's a win-win situation for everybody. We hope you can get these postcards in soon. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tim Spencer sitting in for John Moore on this, a Tuesday, the 13th day of August in the year of our Lord, 2019. We're visiting with Mr. Steve Benoon of IsraeliNewsLive.org, and the surprise for you is my co-host from Saturday. Rick is on the line. Rick is one of the most brilliant men I know, and that is the truth. This ought to get good, folks. All right, Rick, you're on, buddy.
Oh, my God. I don't know if I should speak now. Hey, I've been listening to the show, but to be quite honest, I got in about 5 or 10 minutes late. Had to finish up my prayers from last night because I fell asleep. Yes, that's right, folks. I dare say the P word on the air. It's a fascinating show. Yeah, I know. I'm always on the edge. You know, if you're not on the edge, you're taking up too much space. Steve, fascinating stuff. And to tell you the truth, I've never heard you before, but this is fascinating. And I have a question. I'm gonna be as brief as I can because I don't want to. It's a great show, and I don't want to slow it down. I've got a friend of mine. It appears that you're a Christian. There's a friend of mine, brilliant man. He's a priest, and I have gone round and around with him on this subject about now because I got in late. You had been talking about an insidious faction that basically seeks the destruction of all that is good and normal, the fabric of the family life, God. They seem to want. I'm not even sure they care about money anymore, but they sure seem to want control. And it seems to be their aphrodisiac. But I I must have gotten in late because I did not hear this faction, and this is where the conversation between my buddy and I really where the rubber hits the road. This group of people, they seem to be everybody and everything. They're media moguls, politicians on both sides of the aisle, possibly even people from the church, powerful people from just all over the place. And so I guess the question is, are you going to take all of these people and put them into one category and call them the New World Order? And is that an appropriate term? And if it is, that's fine. But I guess what I would ask you is, what in the world coheses these people? What do they think they're going to get by going up against good people, most likely are the people that raised them, and in God? And what in the world do they think the reward is going to be if they manage to destroy everything? I can't figure this out for the life of me.
Well, it is a massive, when we say New World Order, there's so many different factions in behind the scenes on this, and we can actually go back long before, President Bush ever announced this word New World Order. You can go right back to the 1700s when you had the infiltration of the Freemasons, and I'm not here to say that the Freemasons is some righteous organization. I'm just simply saying that there were certain, of course you had the Illuminati that was created in those days back in the 1700s, and there was a move that was being planned at that time amongst some of the elitist, and I hate to use this term loosely, Jews, because I am Jewish by birth. I am a Christian by faith. I do believe Jesus Christ to be my Savior. But unfortunately, amongst my own kinsmen, we have some very sinister people, and at the same time, we've got a lot of good Jewish people as well. But this whole preparation for a New World Order was to culminate with it being headed up in Jerusalem, and of course, it would have different tentacles in order to bring this about. And like I said, we can see the beginnings of it really in the late 1700s. And then it comes all the way up. And one of the weirdest thing was there was a man a rabbi by the name of Sabbatai Levi, who he was a self-proclaimed Messiah back in the 1600s, and there were at least 500,000 Jews that believed this. Of course, there's still a fraction of the Jewish people that ever accepted it, but and then it was picked up by a guy named Rabbi Jacob Frank, who continued his legacy on, but they believed that bringing about the Messiah would be done through corruption, especially in the Frankist doctrine. He really took it to a new level, that sin and perversion would help usher in the coming of the Messiah. And even in the Chabad organization, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson had said to Netanyahu, and I know it's a little bit of a stretch to say this, but yet it makes me wonder when he says to Netanyahu, when he was at that time, I can't think of what year that was, but Netanyahu, I think, was just a foreign diplomat for Israel here in the United States, but he said, what are you doing to usher in the coming of the Messiah? And he says, well, we're working on it. He says, well, do more. And I don't know if there again is that, in other words, create things to make it happen. Which
Messiah are you talking about they're trying to usher in?
Well, you make a very provocative statement in saying because, there's a lot of Messianic rabbis that are saying that, it's going to be Yeshua. But then I have to ask myself the question, which Yeshua are they talking about? Right. Because it comes down to it, there is this global push to put Christians under what they call the Noahide laws, the 7 Noahide laws, which are not even scriptural, they're just Talmudic, and they come from Rambam, who was a mid-century rabbi that contributed to, like an Encyclopedia Britannica set to the Talmud. And this is where you find those 7 Noahide laws, but they're making this incumbent. It's even in our education law here in America, 114-12, where every year the president that is sitting at the time, all the way back to President Bush, reaffirms the commitment of the 7 Noahide laws on all the nation, which kind of makes you wonder then, why did the LCAU decide to remove the 10 Commandments for the last couple of decades from all the judicial systems here in America, from all the courthouses, etc.? This is just, it's part of the plan, and yeah, I see it coming. And of course, the infiltration in all the organizations that were done. Like I said, you had the Freemasons, but also we had many rabbis that converted to Christianity. We had rabbis that were converting to Islam, and in order to infiltrate the different groups to bring about this end game. And I hate to say it because, this is my own people. I love Israel, but yet we have corruption there. And now this big thing about China coming up. That's another, and I'm trying to put this in a small package for you here, but if you look at China, I got a message from a friend of mine that works with the Mossad, and back when I was bashing China and the Silk Road Initiative, and why were they? They basically take over the port of Israel in Haifa, and now they're building the one in Ashkelon, and they're calling the shots to the United States military, saying that we're not going to be allowed to, when they fully take over, which is in 2021, we're not going to be allowed to pull a ship in with anything on the deck, no planes, no nothing, and I'm like, this doesn't raise eyebrows for people that China's taken over. Well, then I get the message in from the friend of mine that works with the Mossad. He says, Steve, you need to tone down about China. He says China will be the next world superpower, and they are going to replace America. So say good things. I was told that. Say good things about China. Okay, so the next time I went on, I did. I said, the Chinese people, I said, these are some really nice people. They're good people. I said, they're just underneath a communistic, totalitarian regime that is bent on facilitating the next new world order. And
good that's for you, Steve.
Communism. Thank you. So,
okay, so if I may just put a final point on this, let's take a smaller example here. If you have who is a media mogul? Could we use Bloomberg as an example? What in the world does Bloomberg expect if they actually get away with this? And I have 2 comments about that. First of all, I'm under the impression that no one beats God at his own game. So,
agreed.
I mean, Satan wound up getting his butt handed to him, and I think it's going to happen a second time. But my point is, what in the world does Mr. Bloomberg think he has to gain out of this? Does he think he is going to be a deity on earth if they manage to pull this off? Does he think he's going to get a place at the adult table? Is that what these people are after?
That's a good question, and that's one that I don't really know the answer to because
I'd love to know.
I know. I can tell you one thing too, though, to add to the conspiracy with this. Of course, so many people say, they talk about the Rothschilds, etc. We have a bill right now that just passed in Congress, and I want to say that was 788. I can't remember for sure, but I know this is they're linking a lot of the passages of bills that they call anti-Semitism with a lot of the gay rights activist bills out there. But And I'm not for anti-Semitism. I'm very much against anti-Semitism. But what they're doing is they're going a step further. And this bill that went before Congress, they include in this anti-Semitism that you cannot say anything about 9/11. You cannot speak against the Rothschilds controlling the world banks, even though it's very much true. That was actually part of the plan that a lot of people are not aware of. And so the list goes on and on and on. But what people are not aware of, and this is the serious side of all this, Gentiles are, in other words, if you're not Jewish, that's like a second-class citizen. And they're real. And what's sad is that so many Christians, especially in the Messianic realm, this Messianic movements, they are really being duped into believing this system because, of course, most Messianics, they got a good heart, just like CIA, Tim. There's a lot of good-hearted people working there, but we don't really realize the sinister side, unless you really get involved in that. And sometimes it's kind of too late, that once you find out all the bad things we're really doing. But it's the same thing with these guys here. A lot of Messianic people, they have good intentions. They love the Lord just like, the Baptists would or anybody else. They want the coming of the Messiah. They believe that Yeshua or Jesus Christ of Nazareth is the Messiah. But they have no idea what's really going on behind the scenes from Israeli rabbis. And that's not all Israeli rabbis either. I want to make sure I make that clear. But there is a movement that is specifically right now trying to bring the Christians of South America underneath Talmudic rabbis in Israel, and they're saying to you that they have to repent for leaving Judaism. And they're saying this because, of course, they believe that most South Americans are the Jews that went through the Spanish Inquisition, which my father's family did. But, why would I want to go backwards? It makes absolutely no sense to go backwards in this. But this is all part of this New World Order. They really believe that this is coming.
Backwards. That's humor. That's funny. That's, I had my priest friend had a buddy who said, I just want to convert a Jew before I die. and it's kind of funny. The whole thing is, but I just have one more question, and then if unbelievably I have to actually do some work. Are we going to win, Steve? Are we going to prevail here?
Yes. The thing is, and this is the beautiful part about it, Christ is, the Lord Jesus Christ, he is definitely going to win this battle. And I think in the process of this as well, I believe it's going to help open the eyes of many of our Jewish brothers as well, and instead of it being the opposite way around right now. But I will say this, though. I'm afraid, though, this push for this New World Order is going to almost come into a complete fruition before we do win. And so,
you mean before people actually wake up and start a riot? Is that what you mean?
Well, when it comes down to that, I would have to say this here. This is what I was told from, friends that I have in the Mossad. They said, Steve, look, I'm going to tell you right now, Iran is your key. You got to watch what's going to happen to Iran. But when Iran goes down, he said, and he told me, he said, this is not 100%. I'm not saying absolutely. He says, but there's a good chance that Russia's going to do a limited nuclear strike on the United States. He said, they're playing their part. Get that? They're playing their part. A limited nuclear strike. He said they don't want to fully take out the United States. He said, no, that could just be an EMP to bring this nation down. He says, but he said, whatever you do, he said, stay away from the FEMA camp, Steve. He says, they're going to genocide your people. He said, that is coming in your nation. And all the intel I have friends with CIA that work Middle East, etc. Everyone that I know, including one of my old partners, telling me how that the Chinese are being smuggled in through our northern border. And then they're also doing a lot of the fast-track citizenships, things like that, to preparing for a collapse of this nation within. Now this is my opinion. I'll tell you something I think this is all a part of. I think that what their ultimate goal is to put so much pressure, the collapse on this nation, to force the Jews of America to be willing to return to Israel so that they can fulfill this their way of believing that the New World Order or that the coming of the Messiah should be.
Yeah. So you're thinking this would look a little more like Hunger Games before things get better?
Unfortunately, I do believe it is going to look more and more like that, and I'm afraid, unfortunately, there's so many Americans that are so out of shape, and it's going to be more like open season.
Right. Oh, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of bodies around. Well, I better get moving, but, man, I'm going to keep listening. This is great stuff. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it, buddy. Talk to you tonight. Wow. Like I said, Steve, Rick is one of my very best friends. He asks the hard questions.
He does, doesn't he? We went all over the board. This is something you really need hours. And my wife, Yana, when she's on with me, we do a thing called Steve and Yana Chat. You want to talk about somebody that'll take you down the rabbit holes like you've never been before. That girl can flat out do it.
All right, hang on just a second, Steve. We got a break.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tim Spencer sitting in for John Moore on this Tuesday, the 13th day of August, the year of our Lord, 2019. We're visiting with Mr. Steve Benoon from IsraeliNewsLive.org. Steve, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes of airtime left. Go ahead and say whatever you want to say, buddy.
Well, you know, Tim, I think one thing that is important, like I said, it's kind of like a double-edged sword when we talk about the CIA, and and of course what President Bush did back in 1990. There's one side of you that would say, wow, he's covering up one of the biggest scandals in American history, but at the same time, he was also protecting people in the CIA and many others as well, just like in the case of William Barr, who was working with President Bush during the Noriega-Contra affair, which that's what unraveled all of this too.
Right.
Pushing for the pardoning, which the president did pardon up to 6 people, because I really feel like that in the case of the Iran-Contra affair, when we go back and we look at that situation there, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, he was probably their patsy as well for that situation, and of course he was caught up into this this mega mess too. But at the same time, America says we're doing this for national security. I would say this though, Tim, I feel like that we've really just been helping to facilitate this New World Order system that is coming up. And that's what we're doing right now, especially in the Middle East at this point. I can't say so much for Nicaragua, but what's going on now with Syria, with overthrowing Syria, Iran, there's so much I know about Iran. If we'd had time, we could have gone into that. But I have a lot of information about Iran, the stages, the things that are happening that are just... It's all smoke and mirrors. And
well, Rick, Steve, if you ever got time on a Saturday, which I assume is your Sabbath, and I don't know if you want to do it or not. I'd love to have you on my show here on RBN.
I wouldn't mind at all. I would be glad to come on with you. So,
all right, I'll set that up with you by email, or you can give me a phone call. I think you got my phone number. I also want to speak with you about New Orleans 1986 regarding what happened there when the first President Bush was down. So
okay.
I'd like to talk to you privately about that. I know you were. I'm assuming you were involved in that.
Okay. All right. We can go into that as well. So, but yeah, all that sounds great. And Tim, it has been a pleasure to meet you as well. Kind of in an odd way here. And
my honor, sir. And by the way, I want to publicly thank you for your service to our nation, Steve. I know a little bit about your bio. You've been there, you've done that, and in my opinion, you're a true American hero, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't feel like one, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Tim. So
yes, sir.
But at any rate, I don't. How much time do we have left now, Tim?
About a minute.
About a minute. So, well, if you guys that are listening want to know more of some of these things that we do talk about, of course, IsraeliNewsLive.org, YouTube, everything you think of.
Shalom, Steve. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. Stand by. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second hour of the John Moore Show. My name is Tim Spencer from the Rural Survival Show, and I'm sitting in for John this week. Today's date is the 13th day of August in the year of our Lord, 2019. Well, we have Mr. Leon Green on the line, and Leon represents doTERRA Essential Oils. Good morning, Leon.
Good morning. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good, buddy. I'm doing good. I'm so glad you called on because I could not talk about essential oils for an hour if I had to. I don't know enough about them, and I admit I don't. My wife's the expert on that stuff. So, where do we want to start today? And it doesn't have to be essential oils. We can go anywhere you want.
No problem. We can do a basic overview of essential oils, and I'd like to hear more about your show. Oh.
Okay, great. Well, go ahead.
Well, in essence, doTERRA has the finest essential oil in the world, and they started about 11 years ago. And that's because the predecessor to them, they had found that the oils were tainted. So there was glyphosate or Roundup in lavender, and they checked it and they confirmed it. And doTERRA was started because of that. They said, we're not going to put these toxins in our babies and our children and our livestock and our own bodies. So they started their own company. So because of a unethical company, that was actually started. So doTERRA is very transparent in that it will tell. When you have one of the bottles, you can actually click on the QR code on the side of the bottle.
Right.
It'll tell you all about the specific bottle. And if you go to source2u.com, you can see how, everything about that oil. The constituents. So we take lavender, for example. It'll have the breakdown of all of the components, when it was harvested, where it was harvested specifically, or exactly what species of lavender they use. And so they get some from south of France and also some Bulgaria. And so no other company in the world does, because they don't want you to see, hey, yeah, we dilute the oil with this much. It could be jojoba or sunflower or safflower oil. So doTERRA, when you're getting the single oils, is 100% that oil. There's no dilutants. There's no binders or fillers that you see that the cheap companies will do. And I have pictures. I went to a local store, and you can, in Wally World has it too. You can see that they're selling frankincense for 99 cents. Well, there's no medicinal value in a bottle that is that cheap, because all it is And the way I describe it to people is it's gasoline with a pretty smell because it's all petrochemical. There's nothing holistic about that. And that's one thing that's sad about the entire industry is they don't require, there's no standards. And Dote's attitude is we want to have, it's actually, this is our icon is that it is certified pure therapeutic grade. And that means there's nothing artificial whatsoever. Unlike the other companies, it can be 10% artificial, and the rest is 1% pure, and that's good enough for them. So go ahead, sir.
Well, just a quick question. Now, if I understand from previous conversations you've had with John, every single batch is tested, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Every single batch and liter is tested. It delays the entire production, but it's more important that you have something that is pure, 100% organic. It's actually beyond organic because they test every batch by 2 outside certified laboratories. And we do over 15 different tests on them. So they test for microbes and for heavy metals and chirality, which is it actually man-made or is it synthetic? I mean, is it man-made or natural? And so the molecules will even go right-handed or left-handed, and they will be able to describe that on the MS or the mass spectrometry or the gas chromatograph. And so there's over 15 different tests that are done on every one. So we know the caliber. And so when somebody says, ours are just like this company's, or we get it sourced from the same people that doTERRA gets it from, and that is completely erroneous. And we've even gone to court with the companies that have, had this slander and libel because they will say they get it from the same people. And now we're at the point of 95% of all of our sources and the people that we work with worldwide are exclusive to doTERRA. So that is completely bogus because we have that information. So when people come after Tim Spencer and they say lies continually, eventually you get tired of it and then you take him to court because they're slandering you, and that's what's happened. We don't prefer to go to court, but you can't lie against the major industry leader continually and expect to get away with it. So doTERRA is wants to ensure that companies don't try to steal market share by lying about it, and that's why they've had to do that. And so, and one other thing is you probably heard is that doTERRA keeps a evidentiary or a copy and locked up in a safe or safe deposit box under, in the same caliber as police evidence because it is so important. Because people say, well, ours has this, and because when you do a batch, we will have all the specs on that and it's all historical information. So when companies say, ours is, we can bring out the batch and we can present it as evidence because it's been stored as evidence for the last 11 years. So that just shows you the caliber of the company. The integrity of the company is impeccable, and we've made such inroads in this industry that, we've gone from being completely unknown 11 years ago now to being the world leader because they are pure and potent. And so because of how well we're doing, FDA came after us about 4 years ago because, they were so used to getting all the drug money from, Pfizer and Merck and all the drug companies that they're like, hey, these companies not like that. And so they said, hey, you got to shut those people down. And we were doing everything above board, and so that's not a problem. But we had to tone down the mentality of saying, hey, these oils can do this, 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 and this. And FDA said only doctors can give out the literature and give out the cure. Everybody else has to jump through our hoops. And so, we jumped through the hoops and we're back on track. But yeah, it did put a damper because people were like, if these are so good, why is my drug doctor not telling me about these things? Because obviously, they've been to school for 20 years and they should know everything. Well, they know everything about pharmaceuticals, but they know very little about nutrition. They take 3 credit hours in 10, 15 years of education on nutrition. So if they don't know how much the food that's now GMO'd and altered beyond belief internationally, that many of our foods are banned internationally, especially our products, because of how much, how many chemical pesticides. So these doctors know a ton about symptoms and masking them, and the opioids and all the other problems that we're dealing with. But when it comes to preventing the issues of just prevention of maladies, they don't pursue that because there's no money in prevention. If you're healthy as a horse, Tim, they don't get paid a penny. But if you are
right,
or if you're dead, they don't get paid a penny. But if you're sick, somewhere in between, it's a $2 trillion industry worldwide because of quote, the medical industry.
Understood.
So,
the way your company is so above board and is so transparent, I mean, that is just incredibly impressive to me. What can I say?
Right.
You broke up on me a little bit, or maybe it was my Skype breaking up. What did you last say, Leon? I'm sorry.
No, sir. No problem. I said, go ahead. I'm listening, sir.
Okay. Now, let's go. I know you're restricted on what you can say because of the FDA. But maybe we can talk about some of those things that you're not restricted by the FDA on, about some of the benefits of various oils and stuff like that.
Yes, sir. Now, so think about this. Humans existed thousands of years before chemicals came out in the last 150 years. So how did they survive? How did they survive all the onslaughts of microbes, bacteria, parasites? They use organic, and at the time everything was organic because they didn't have the pesticides and everything from the pharmaceutical laced petrochemical industry. And so, for over 6,000 years, people consumed plants and herbs and tinctures and essential oils to keep their health up and to help them when they were impacted by maladies, whether it's typhus and dysentery, or if you think about the bubonic plague. You see those pictures of those, they almost look like little penguins with the long pointed noses. Those are the doctors. Those were the doctors during the Middle Ages who would come into, and they would come into the houses, and they would take off they'd cart away the bodies. But what was in that long pointed nose were 5 different essential oils and their underlying herbs. So they had clove and cinnamon and eucalyptus and rosemary and lemon, and those were in those little beaks. And so if you look at the old pictures of the bubonic plagues, you'll see that. And the way they found that out was they actually captured a bunch of thieves that were robbing the houses of all these dead victims. They'd go in after the people died and go, just rifle through the house, and they would protect themselves with these oils. And so they lied. The government lied to the thieves, saying, tell us how you survive when everyone else is dying around you. And he said, well, we put this against our nose, and it protects us from all the bugs. And when they found it and they tested it, they still killed the people who did all the looters, but they had the information, and that was passed on to the medical people at the time, so it'd protect them. But for the most part, the oils and the natural, not for the most part, for eon and millennium, the botanicals have helped save humanity, and you see animals eating them too. So you've heard of willow bark being eaten by the deer. The Romans and the Greeks found that out thousands of years ago, and that was salicylic acid on the form of the bark. And so, they've known about that off willow bark for thousands of years, and they've been using it. So that's just one example of how animals even educated humans about, hey, if you're in pain, chew on this bark. And most people don't think about that, but that shows you how simple, it is. And that I always describe it this way: this is God's medicine, and we just put it in a bottle. So they use the oils are made through three main ways. It is made through steam distillation, where they pass things like peppermint. They may get a ton of peppermint, and they do it under a certain pressure and temperature, and they extract only the oil that comes from the leaves. It doesn't come from the flowers or the stem or the roots, only in the leaves. So if you've ever had crushed up a peppermint leaf and you smell that on your fingers, done is broken those sacs that are on the top of the leaf. And that's the way it protects itself from animals that want to devour it, whether it is, other animals, spiders and insects really loathe the menthol that is in peppermint. So you can use peppermint as a natural barrier. Yes. And mice do too. They despise menthol. And so, but it is highly effective in causing all the oils to penetrate deeper into your body. And so that's one way, is distillation. Another way is the cold pressing, very much like olive oil pressing. They press the oils, not under temperature, and they get, different grades. And so you can press out the rinds and other of like lemons and oranges, tangerines, kumquats, and then you get just the oil. And those oils are different from the fruit on the inside. The fruit is acidic. The oil on the outside is basic. And so when people say, well, lemon is too it burns my mouth because it's too acidic. Well, this comes from the outside. It's not the inside. Just like grapefruit is not. The grapefruit oil is different from the grapefruit juice. Where people drink, and say they're on statins or some other drug. Grapefruit juice, it causes the body to metabolize any man-made chemical up to 11 times more than, if you just didn't even have it with grape juice. So you'll find that grape juice is pretty much verboten at all of the senior centers because they realize that, the vast majority of them are on drugs. And because they're on drugs, if they have grapefruit juice, it's like instead of taking one statin in the morning, they took 11. And many of them have died. Some Canadian doctor found this out about a decade ago. They didn't realize that, and it's something natural. Grapefruit juice is phenomenal for you as long as you're not on all sorts of man-made chemicals, and then you can't take it anymore because it's so detoxifying, and it will metabolize those chemicals. And so I describe the oils as if you look at Genesis 1:29, for I give you all seed-bearing plants for your benefit. And so these plants are antimicrobial. Certain ones are anti-parasitic, like oregano is phenomenal for parasites in the human gut and also inside the also inside livestock. And so others are antiviral. The citrus oils are highly effective being antiviral, and and others are antibacterial. So it really depends on which vector you're looking at or what pathogens. But a good example, frankincense has so many benefits. The reason why it was talked about in the Bible, and there's description in the Bible over 400 times where they describe how the oils were used. And so you think of Rose of Sharon, frankincense, myrrh, which they gave to the youth, the baby Jesus, along with Rose of Sharon and spikenard and all these others, cassia. And so, they are replete in the Bible because of the fact that they were used as anointing oils for David and Samuel. And so the history in the Greeks...
Hey, Leon, we got a break, buddy. We got a break. Hang on just a minute, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in 3 minutes. 1-800-313-9443.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. and knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
It's happening, ladies and gentlemen. We here at RBN are working with Front Sight Firearms Training Institute to bring our audience the best in combat, tactical, and defensive firearms training. Whether you're a private citizen who is new to firearms, or you have a concealed weapon permit and want a level of training that surpasses what you've received from your local gun range, Front Sight provides priceless education and skills taught by seasoned law enforcement, military, and private citizen instructors to levels that far exceed law enforcement and military standard. With nearly 1 million responsible citizens trained from every town, city, and state from across the United States, Front Sight has bolstered the Patriot movement to a whole new level. Contact Dan Sutterfield by phone at 573-762-2356 or 573-465-2356 or shoot him an email at domedan, DOMEDAN, at hotmail.com. This is a limited time opportunity. Don't miss it.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tim Spencer from the Rural Survival Show, sitting in for John Moore on this, the 13th day of August in the year of our Lord, 2019. Right now, we're visiting with Mr. Leon Green, who represents doTERRA Oils. Leon, could you tell people how to go about ordering these oils? I think from John's website, am I correct?
Absolutely. They can get the oils directly from his website, and they can put the order in online, and he has a huge amount of people who don't use the online presence, so they can always call doTERRA directly, and they just give John Moore's name, saying, "Hey, I want to be placed on his team," and he will get the credit. All they have to do is say his name, and they have his phone number. That's good. If not, they can say he lives in Davisville, Missouri, and they will be able to find him very quickly. And then they can put an order in. The best way to obtain the oils is via kits, because when you get a kit, you get them actually less than you become a member with doTERRA, and you get them at 25% off for life. So it's a one-time membership fee,
right?
As a wholesale, so you get it at 25% off, and then if you continue to order the oils monthly, and especially since you're into preparedness, if you get the oils on a regular basis, then as you use the loyalty rewards program, we have that's another free program that allows you to start to cash your oils just like you do food and water and ammo and medical supplies and things like that. You get it. You start off at 10%, and then it goes all the way up to 30% after a year, after you put orders of over $50 and over. And then, so in essence, you instead of paying 100% like you do at typical markets, doTERRA is not sold. It's not sold in stores, and that's because when you walk into Wally World, they don't care which brand that you get, and they don't know about it because it takes years of years of education to know how to use the oils. And, as a salesperson, for them to learn that, it would be too much. So doTERRA is all word of mouth. And so we share the oils with others. And that's how we've gone from having nobody in 2010, in 2009, to now having over 8.4 million people, because people share things that work, just like referrals. People talk about things that work because you have more credibility and more trust from friends and people you meet than, watching it on TV. And, so then they place the order, and we have 2 shipping locations. One's in Utah, and the other one is in Atlanta, Georgia. When we're talking about America, we're in over 130 different countries. Israel is opening up next quarter, and so Europe has been there. Yes, so people, I was there in Tel Aviv and Eilat, and I met a man who he was pretty much on death's door, and he was a believer, and we talked about, he was pretty much becoming septic. And so I gave him my oils when I was in there, and then I ordered a kit from Europe to be sent to him. And he's alive and well now, but the difference, because the doctors had him on all sorts of IV meds, and he was just crashing, and none of their drugs were working. And so I asked him and his wife, I said, if you guys are open to natural healing, and I always call it God's medicine before man messed it up. And another thing I always, God doesn't make any mistakes, and he doesn't do side effects.
Right.
So if you think about...
Well, Leon, I'm kind of...
Yes?
No, I was just going to say, I'm kind of disappointed that people have lost the understanding of natural medicines. My wife and I both are, of course, part Native American. My wife can cure almost anything. She goes out in the woods, comes back an hour later. If I've got a bad cold, makes me a tea, and the cold is gone in less than 24 hours. Just stuff like that. And we've lost so much of this knowledge. So much.
You're right, absolutely right. And I've taken botanical courses, and you may know him. Have you ever heard of Sam Kaufman from Texas?
Name rings a bell.
He's an 18 Delta Special Forces doc, and along with Steve Pearson, they were, but specifically Sam Kaufman, he has a company called the Urban Path, and he teaches on the plants. And I went out in Utah with him when he came to another training program, and we did a walkabout, and we saw yarrow and echinacea and all these other plants that were just on the side of the road, and dandelion, and people think are weeds. And so, he educated us, and doTERRA now carries yarrow. And yarrow, it's a pretty white flower, has fuzzy green leaves that are pretty unique, and that's prolific, especially here in Colorado with all the rain we've had, and those things are awesome. But if you don't have access to that under 2 feet of snow, or flooding, which has happened in the Midwest for a long time, or recently, so what happens is if you don't have that as stored away, then now you have to rely on the pharmaceutical drugs and go to the Wally World to pick up these things, or the doctor. But during an emergency...
Hang on just a second, Steve. We got a break, buddy. Ladies and gentlemen, back in 3 minutes, 1-800-313-9443.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We have a special promotion going on at Republic Broadcasting. This is a fundraiser for Republic Broadcasting involving the Energy Cleaner. Mail me a postcard. My address is at my website at thelibertyman.com. We pick a postcard every other Thursday. When your postcard is drawn out, you get to buy an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285, $70 discount. $200 goes to Republic Broadcasting. You also get a 10% discount on my mattress pads. So get those postcards in, put your name, your telephone number, your email address on there, and when your postcard is drawn, you get to get an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285. Mattress pads, 10% off. Help us out at Republic Broadcasting and help yourself to get an energy cleaner at a deep discount. It's a win-win situation for everybody. We hope you can get these postcards in soon. Thank you very much.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We are visiting with Mr. Leon Green, and this is Tim Spencer sitting in for Mr. John Moore on this, the 13th day of August in the year of our Lord, 2019. Leon, I apologize for calling you Steve. That was our last hour's guest. My mistake and my apologies, sir.
No problem. I was listening to you guys as well. It was very insightful about what you were talking about. So, and then the third way the oils are acquired is they use a natural solvent that will. So, example is frankincense, and that is hard to extract, and that's why you've heard of the spice trail that goes around the outside of the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, because they had to dry them out, and they had to use alcohol and various other dissolvers to get those resins to be in a oil soluble solution. And so, if there's a BBC article, some people are like, well, I want to see more information about that. They can go to BBC on YouTube, and there's like a 3-hour video series, a documentary on the entire spice trade, and specifically using frankincense or frankincense, because you'd hear these caravans that had hundreds and hundreds of camel, and these are very wealthy people. In essence, the merchants, the medical merchants of yesteryear, and they would transfer all the spice to Jerusalem and to the other major cities, and frankincense was as valuable or more valuable than gold. And if you look at the three things that were given to Jesus, it was frankincense, myrrh, and gold. Well, right. You can't use gold unless you're at the monatomic level, for health reasons. But myrrh and frankincense, if you're ever in doubt of what oil to use, frankincense has over 650 known constituents, and it is highly effective being anti-tumoral and anti-canceral. A matter of fact, there's a European magazine called, the European version called Time, and it says frankincense cure to cancer, and it has a question mark, and then it's added line to it saying it's no longer a question mark, meaning how effective it is for being anti-canceral. And people say, well, why don't the drug companies do that? What they do is they take a synthetic knockoff of the real plant, and they go into a lab and have on their coats, and then they tweak those molecules, and they make those molecules just like the GMO. They tweak them to their needs, but they can't produce 650 different constituents. And so what they do is they focus on whatever's the most important to, for their drug or their R&D. And so those drugs that they produce in the store and the little pills that you get at pharmacies, those are knockoffs. 95% of those are knockoffs of the original plant. So why pay out the nose and have the side effects that you see at the end of 25% of all the commercials out there? This may cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, leakage, suicidal ideation, and death. And it's like, holy cow, I just had a sore throat and I'm going to die? And we lose over 250,000 people each year from properly prescribed drugs in the right dosage, in the right method, at the right time, and they still die from it because they are foreign to the human body. And that still applies with the pet meds, too. Those pet meds are typically done at the same location. They just charge substantially less than they do for humans. But you hear dogs having side effects, and they die, too. So why would somebody pay for a knockoff of the real thing that God made? And because we are being propagandized and marketed as such, saying, hey, you have this pill, you need this pill. You have this pill, you have another pill for you. And there are people I've met during classes I've done who take over 33 drugs a week. And the vast majority of those that were that high are over 20 a day. So you have contraindications. That means one drug will impact the absorption and the ability of the other drug to be functional. So, now they have to keep increasing the dosage because the human body gets tolerant to those chemicals.
Right.
And you heard about the superbugs, right? Like MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or Clostridium difficile, and E. coli and Salmonella. Well, they're becoming more resistant because we, especially Americans, are using that toxin triclosan, which is a xenohormone. That means it's foreign to the human body, and it causes breast on little girls, as early as menstruation as early as 8 years old now, and little boys now are getting man boobs, and they're 10 years old, and that's because they're using that antibacterial soap. And that stuff is horrid, and it's so bad that even the country of Canada has banned it entirely. But we just keep pumping it out, and we put it now in our clothes. Oh yes, sir. The state of Minnesota knows it's so bad that not any of their state funds can be used to buy that hormone inhibitor. So there's so many problems attached to that, but people just do it because they're ignorant. When I go into a restaurant or a toilet, restroom, the first thing I do is I use hot water, but I look and see if it says triclosan or antibacterial. I don't even touch that stuff. I'd rather scorch my hands and use the ablation of using paper towels than take that inhibitor that's going to mess up my hormone system. And I speak to so many women who say, I can't have a baby. Well, if we look at the pesticides they have in their food, and I hear it from their grandparents all the time saying, my daughter can't have babies. And we find out that, what they're doing and what they eat, the hormones they're on, and especially the triclosan, which is the active ingredient in that antibacterial. It does nothing for viruses. It's only antibacterial, but it's terrible on the human body. So, if you remember Hosea 4:6, my people perish because of lack of
knowledge.
Knowledge, you're right. And that's what we are doing, Tim and I and John are doing, is passing knowledge on to people who are receptive and and able and willing to make changes in their life for themselves and their family and their children.
Well,
so I would love to.
It's an admirable thing for you to do. I mean, yes, you make an income on it, but there's so many other things you could do, and you are helping so many people. You and John both are helping so many people get a better life. I mean, Lori sets it up for me, but we use the oils. I use it in conjunction with the energy cleaner, which is a godsend for me. It gave me 10 more good years of life. But between the two, considering my physical state, I'm pretty good. I really am.
That's good, very good to hear, because I use energy cleaner too. And I forgot, where do you live, Tim? Are you in Missouri or are you in New Mexico?
No, I'm in Missouri, buddy. I live about 40 miles from where John lives in Davisville. I live in a little town called Salem, Missouri, actually about 2 miles outside of it. We've got a little 50-acre farm here, which now, because of physical ailments, none of us can maintain, but it's still a great place to live.
Yes, sir.
I love it.
Excellent. And are you going to be going on that cruise? You and your wife going to go on that cruise in February timeframe with John and I?
I don't know yet, Leon. I truly don't know. Things are very fluid right now here at the house. I just don't know. I would actually love that.
Yes.
Not for the going to sea part. I've had a rule for a long time that I don't go to sea unless I get paid for it. But I would like the company of all these fine people. That I would thoroughly enjoy. The going to sea part, oh well.
Yes, sir. I was in the Navy, and I
Me too.
My last was in the Persian Gulf for 11 months. So I had to take my son on a cruise, so he would love the ocean too. And so we went to we went to the Western Caribbean, but this time we're going to be going to the Eastern Caribbean with John and and also, I think Steve, the gentleman before me, the previous host or the guest, he's going to be doing a special in Orlando, landlocked at the about what he knows, and so I'm excited about learning all these other things, and I know I'm going to get tons of questions about the oils, and I'm going to bring mini samples for the people who are able to come, and so I'm excited about the trip. And if you're able to come, that would be awesome. I'd love to meet you. I've heard you on on his show multiple times, and he always talks about you. So, yes, I'm excited about that.
Well, yeah, it would be good. I just don't know yet if I can do it. We still have a farm to attempt to take care of, and there's a lot of things that are going on. Nothing bad. It's all physical ailments throughout the whole family. Bad knees, broken shoulders, to you name it. So I just don't know.
Yes, sir. Okay. And then, so what doTERRA does after that is it now takes these oils, tests them thoroughly. There are companies who they only do one test and they stick in the bottle and they can put pure on there, and that's what I was talking about the standards before. There's no consistency across the board, and that includes the Europeans. And the Europeans and the Asians are much more receptive to the essential oils, just like you said you and your wife are, because of the knowledge that was passed down through generations. Well, the Europeans and the Asians have been using Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine for since time immemorial, because they know it works. And so when they see these silly Americans taking a drug for everything, they just dismiss it, thinking, okay, well, that's what you want to do, that's great. And matter of fact, those two sectors are growing the fastest, because now we are growing in China and in Europe, drastically, in India, because they already know how effective turmeric is, and ginseng and ginger is, and the Europeans knowing marjoram and thyme and all the other native European plants. And so for them, it's a no-brainer. You go to natural first. And right now, doTERRA is doing a study right now, and which they have campuses nationwide and eventually going to be worldwide, where they use typical doctors that go for the surgery and everything else, but they're using these medical facilities to ask the doctors to say, hey, you have an option. You can do this, this, and this, and you can take these pharmaceutical drugs, or you have an option. You can use doTERRA's oils, and here's the science behind it. So we're now educating mainstream doctors here in America on how to incorporate it into their practice, because 80% of Americans want to do something natural with their body and their children, but they don't know. And you won't see our ads on TV, because doTERRA is all word of mouth. Costco wanted to buy doTERRA, and DKNY, Donna Karen, wanted to buy it when it was only a year or two old. And we've changed the entire industry because of how potent and how pure and how efficacious the oils are. And so we are not on the New York Stock Exchange. They are actually in our charter. They're banned from doing that, because we want to maintain the purity. Because once a mega corporation buys it out, they're going to let all the hands get involved in the pot. And they're going to say, "Oh, we can make it cheaper, like this company does it." It only costs them 42 cents to make the bottle and everything. So we'll make it super cheap. So doTERRA said, we are going to stay pure, and we're going to stay to our standards. And so that's why doTERRA is growing by over 3,500 people per day, because they realize how effective this is. And it's been doing that for the last 11 years now. So doTERRA is an awesome company to work with, and their science is available. And when people say, well, I want to see the science, I want to have the analysis, there's over 40,000 studies on essential oils. If you go to this website called pubmed.gov or .org, pubgov.gov, you can actually see it's a clearinghouse worldwide of all the studies that are done on any kind of medicinal therapy, surgeries, pharmaceutical drugs, and holistic. And so acupuncture, acupressure, essential oils, native healing, all those things are there. And you can see these studies that have double-blind placebo effect studies, and you can type in cancer, frankincense oil, essential oil, and you'll see there's about 100 studies on it and how effective it is in reducing and eliminating tumors and cancers. But you're not going to see this on TV or hearing it from the National Cancer Institute because it's all about money for them. You know, I see these people, especially they driving around with these pink rubber, pink bows, and I'm like, 1 in 2 men in America will get cancer, and 1 in 3 women will get cancer in their lifetime. And for the vast majority of it, it can be eliminated based on diet and exercise and changing their lifestyle. But because we're exposed to so many toxins, there's over 85,000 chemicals in America, and a lot of those are banned internationally. The countries just say, we prevent that chemical. I mean, look at what happened in Bhopal, India, back in the 70s, where Dow Chemical killed like 40,000 people. I remember that. And because it was overseas, the Americans weren't told much about it. But, those smaller countries have been burned so many times by the toxins brought in that they're like, we're not even going to bring it in. And you'll see the multinationals try to lean on the politicians and say, here, just let us get in and we'll pay you, $20 million to pass our poisons on to your people. And so many of them will have ethics and say, no, my country's not for sale. And those are pretty rare. Like you were talking about the Illuminati and the evil people of the Masons and the Freemasons, especially at the higher levels of, 33 and above. A lot of those people are just roll over and they just accept the poisons. But we, as Americans, we watch the vast majority of the stuff on TV and just assume that it's right. And, the USDA is here to help us, and so is FDA. And there's a thing called the iatrogenic disease. India, Alpha, Tango, Romeo, Oscar, Golf, Echo, November, India, Charlie. Iatrogenic disease. And over 650,000 Americans die each year from it. And that's when the doctors and nurses make mistakes. You've heard of people getting the wrong limb amputated because they made a mistake on the paperwork, or they leave something inside while they do surgery, and they lean forward and they puncture the heart with a scalpel that was left inside. So there's checks and balances now that have been improved, but we still lose, almost 2/3 a year.
Yeah, hang on just a minute, buddy. We got our last break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in 3 minutes. Message to Julie. I've lost my Skype window. I apologize. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tim Spencer sitting in for John Moore on Tuesday, the 13th of August, 2019. We are visiting with Mr. Leon Green, representing doTERRA Oils. Leon, go ahead. You got about 3 minutes to wrap up your thoughts, buddy. Are you there, Leon?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can now. Yes, sir.
Okay, good to hear. Well, I just want to convey the fact that, the oils are natural and your body is carbon-based, just like the oils are, whereas the pharmaceuticals are petroleum-based. And so that's why you have these side effects and the tolerance and the addictions. And so, especially from a preparedness point of view and just as a mother's the ability to nurture and take care of her family, you now control. You become Dr. Mom. We have the best traumatic medicine in the whole world, but we have no motivation for prevention because there's no money in it for the medical industry. And so if you can not be sick, if you can keep your family healthy and not have to go to the hospital where all the bugs are naturally, then you save money, you save pain, diarrhea, vomiting, and all the other things that incumbent upon sickness, that you can take back that control. And then, obviously, if your child falls off out of a tree and breaks an arm, yeah, you have the best medicine, but they have no motivation to keep you healthy, because if you're healthy, they don't get paid. So that's the main thing I try to convey. The oils don't have a shelf life. They found oils in King Tut's tomb they found 160 liters of frankincense, myrrh, and spikenard that were still viable over 3,400 years later. So for preppers, they're awesome that they're small, they're portable, they are less expensive than the drugs that are out there, they have no shelf life, there's no side effects, and you can break them, you can put them into smaller bottles, and you can cachet them. Put them on the ground 6 feet and below, and as long as they're cool, dark, and dry, they will be effective. Plants are awesome. You can make your own tinctures, and if you want to do it yourself, you can always make your own oils. But the difference is, if your neighbor uses glyphosate and that blows into your garden, you're going to be eating their Roundup with your tomatoes and your... And so many people don't have the completely organic gardens, even though their yard is. The neighbors aren't. The people who don't have awesome, retreats like you do out in the country. But the chemicals are still in the air. So the advantage of having the oils, that you can store them easily, they're inexpensive, and I have them in all my med kits because they are antibacterial, antiviral, anti-inflammatory. And so there's so many different benefits. That's why John and I have been doing this for over 3 years, educating people. And each week we always try to go down a different topic, so it's always new. But the best way is obtain a kit from doTERRA, get the Modern Essentials book, and you too can now protect your family very easily, very simply, because the book is broken down into, what is the ailment, and it'll describe what are the oils that are beneficial for that, and the science is behind it. So I want to say thank you for your time, Jim.
I enjoyed it very much, Leon. Well, folks, we'll be back same time, same channel tomorrow. Tomorrow's guests are Professor James McCanney in the first hour and Mr. Jeff Nyquist in the second hour. So hope to see you then. Bye-bye.